Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest, Robert W. Sullivan IV, and we're discussing cinema symbolism, a guide to esoteric imagery in popular movies. And Robert, you with me?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Cool. Yeah, this is fascinating. I really find this topic very, very interesting. So once again, I appreciate you coming on tonight and discussing this with us. It's really, nice to kind of dive in here and kind of decode some of these films. So it is kind of a chess game without a doubt here. So what about Alfred Hitchcock?
Yeah, well, you have some interesting things going on with Hitchcock. One of the things that you have going on with Hitchcock that you will really find in movies, and it's funny you mentioned this, is this ties into the whole thing with Black Swan. Was Hitchcock was obsessed with this concept of the woman's attire. And what he really plays around with, you'll find this in Dollar M for Murder, and you'll really see it in Psycho, is the concept of the conscious ego versus the shadow self. And this comes straight out of Jungian psychology, where when the woman is being forthright and is being an upstanding person, or is being just acting accordingly, she wears the light, or she's with her friends or something like that, she wears the light colored outfits, or the white lingerie. You'll find this in Dollar M for Murder, where Grace Kelly's character starts off the movie in all the whites and the light colors and the tans. But as she gets more involved and it becomes darker, the clothing goes from that to becoming very dark. You'll really see it in Psycho, where the Janet Leigh character, Marion Crane, at the beginning of the movie, she's in the white underwear. But then after she steals the money and commits the evil, she's only in the black underwear. Hitchcock was completely obsessed with this, and he even went so far as to he selected the lingerie that is Starlet's wore. He was so obsessed with it, and you will see this carried forward in some modern movies. Black Swan is one of them, where the sexually promiscuous or the darker female characters, such as Lily by the Lily character, Mila Kunis, always wears the black clothing. The mother character, the oppressive mother, is always in the black clothing, where the Nina Sayers character, the innocent girl, the Natalie Portman character, is always in the white, the white attire, the light color. So that's something that comes straight out of the world of Alfred Hitchcock. And it's interesting because, and this is somewhat well known, but I do mention it in the book. Well, I wouldn't say it's well known, but it is interesting. Is in Psycho, you'll have that whole thing going on, and you'll find it in Dollar M for Murder as well, with the whole color schemes with the clothing. But the whole thing with Norman Bates, some people aren't aware of this. The character of Norman Bates is actually based on a real life serial killer by the name of Ed Gein. He was a Wisconsin serial killer. He was very ghoulish, and he idolized his mother. And he apparently, the story is that he was he would rob graves and try to find women's bodies that looked like his mother and things like that. And of course, Norman Bates keeps the mother's corpse up in the window and in the house. So the whole Norman Bates character is based upon a real life serial killer that Hitchcock was fascinated with by the name of Ed Gein. And Gein actually turns up in other movies. He is Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Is based on Ed Gein, and in the movie Silence of the Lambs, the one with Jodie Foster and Hannibal Lecter was Anthony Hopkins. The serial killer known as Buffalo Bill is a composite of three real life serial killers. Ed Gein is one of them. The other two is Gary Heidnik and Ted Bundy. So yeah, you'll find that also in film. But yeah, with Hitchcock, you have the whole thing going on, with the clothing, with in Dollar M for Murder and Psycho, and you'll find the whole Norman Bates character based on this character named Ed Gein. And yeah, I mean, Hitchcock was a cinematic genius, and was very into into these themes, and you'll see it in other movies. I talk about it in Cinema Symbolism, and it's something I'm really hitting on in Cinema Symbolism too.
Wow, yeah, your movies. in your movie history without a doubt. That's fascinating. I didn't know that about Alfred Hitchcock. That's pretty incredible. I don't know how many people do know that, actually.
Yeah, Hitchcock was into this material, but Hitchcock, it was a book by Robert Bloch. I think it's actually called Psycho, and Hitchcock liked it. And this is about this guy named Ed Gein. He's a real life serial killer. People can go look it up. And he's very ghoulish. But the Norman Bates character is based on Gein. Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacres is another retelling of the Gein legend. And Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. The Buffalo Bill character is interesting. The Buffalo Bill character, Jane Gum was his name, is a composite of 3 real-life serial killers. Gein was one of them because Gein used to rob graves, and he was after these. What he would do is he would kill women and try to de-skin their bodies to create a suit for out of flesh. To dress up like his mother. And of course, this was what Buffalo Bill was trying to do, was create the woman's suit out of the dead skins. I'm trying to keep this family friendly as possible,
right.
But that's okay. No,
that's
okay.
Hour, but yeah, no.
I was thinking the same thing. It is the witching hour. And then Ted Bundy, one of the things he used to do was to lure women near his car was he would bandage up his arm. He would put on a phony cast or a phony ace bandage and then struggle moving a piece of furniture or something heavy near his car, and a woman would see it and come over and try to help him, and that's how he'd get him into his car. And of course, this is what Buffalo Bill does with the sofa, where he's trying to load it into the back of the van, and the woman sees him and goes and help him. That's Ted Bundy on screen. And then Gary Heidnik was a Philadelphia serial killer who had this torture dungeon in his basement. He had a pit that he used to put women in, as part of his, psychological dysfunction. And of course, this is what Buffalo Bill does. He keeps the woman in the basement dungeon. So you'll find serial killers in film is another one that I talk about in Cinema Symbolism. So you'll have Ed Gein as Norman Bates and Leatherface, and you'll have Buffalo Bill as Ted Bundy, Gary Heidnik, and Gein as well. And I think there's some others. They're escaping me right now. But it's another fascinating topic, and you'll find it in Psycho and these other movies.
Yeah, take a look at those. And what about Steven Spielberg and Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah, well, what's interesting with Raiders of the Lost Ark? I don't think, by and large, you have. I've watched that movie a dozen times, and this is something I'm actually talking about in Cinema Symbolism too. But what is interesting with this movie, and I can't help but think this is a coincidence, is you get into the whole concept of where. And it's something I talk about in Royal Arch of Enoch as well, but it's something I'm revisiting in Cinema Symbolism too, with some religious cinema, where you have the whole concept of Christianity and even Judaism being just sort of parallels of the Egyptian religion, things like that, and even the Jewish religion, is incorporating this as well, elements of astrology and astrotheology, and it's funny with the Ark of the Covenant, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the final resting place is in Egypt, of all places. And I can't help but think that by placing this Judaic, Christian relic almost, well, more of a Judaic relic, but certainly has Christian implications as well. In Egypt, its final resting place in Egypt in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I can't help if the filmmakers aren't trying to secretly pay homage to Judaic Christianity's true Egyptian origins. It's something I talk about in Cinema Symbolism too, and I just wonder if that can't be more than a coincidence.
Right. Yeah. So, do you see any correlation with some of his movies on UFOs pertaining to any of the symbolism?
Well, I've seen, of course, E.T., and I've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind. These are Spielberg movies. And Spielberg is definitely influenced by the esoteric, the arcane. Lucas is as well. And these are movies that deal with UFOs, obviously Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T. I've watched them numerous times. I've never seen any sort of hidden mythological underpinnings to the movies. I will say it's interesting that the one that I will say that is somewhat unique it's in E.T. And I don't know how many people are aware of this or not, and I know it's intentionally done. But it's we talk about on the show. We talk about hidden symbolisms in movies. Like numerology, things like that. I want to say this for you and all your listeners. I mean, we probably won't have time to get into it in full blown. But when it comes to these movies, know also that there is actors who are casted for occult reasons. The casting of an actor, believe it or not, can actually have occult significance. The release date of a movie, believe it or not, can actually have an occult astrological significance. I found this as well. And talking about this, the movie poster, the artwork, the movie poster art can have occult themes, and this is E.T. The movie poster for E.T. is the Michelangelo painting, the Sistine Chapel mural of God touching Adam with the hand, creating life, and the E.T. poster is the alien hand touching the child hand. It's the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel painting is the E.T. movie poster, and I can't help but wonder if Spielberg with that wasn't trying to, on a subconscious level, trying to suggest possibly the extraterrestrial origins of mankind. This has been well documented,
right.
And you'll find this in the Arthur C. Clarke 2001 movies as well. The extraterrestrial tie-in. I mean, this gets into the works of people like Zecharia Sitchin, things like that. But yeah, I mean, even like, this is something, the artwork of movies and sort of things like that is something I'm touching. The Rocky movie is another one where the poster, and the whole theme of Rocky, the boxer with Adrian, it's the anime and animus. It's the unification of the sun and the moon, the male and the female, where Rocky can't make a move unless the moon or Adrian approves of it. You'll find this on the movie poster as well, the sacred feminine and the masculine. So yeah, I mean, even when it comes to these movies, it doesn't just end with the movie. You got to pay attention to the actors in the movies, the artwork associated with the movies. You'll find it. You'll find it there as well. It's a fascinating subject matter. I'm doing much more with the Lovely Bones movie, with the movie about the little girl, the movie poster with that. This is something I'm talking about in Cinema Symbolism too. This is the whole concept of Manichaean cosmology, light versus darkness. Hades, Harvey is the villain who keeps the little girl in the subterranean vault under the cornfield. This is Hades kidnapping Persephone, who is the goddess of corn. This is all mythology. Pay attention to the movie posters as well and the artwork. You'll find some real interesting arcana there. And yeah, E.T., just right off the bat, the movie poster is the Sistine Chapel Michelangelo artwork.
Wow, that's fascinating. I guess movies are a form of sacred ceremony when you look at it, and then you have to ask, who's the puppet master? Or is it just synchronicity? Is it just that everybody's on the same level of consciousness and they're all working on the movie and it just kind of formulates this way?
Well, some of it can be synchronicity. I mean, and we get into concepts. For starters, let me just say this once and for all. A lot of this is being intentionally done, if not most of it. I mean, I want to make that perfectly clear. These guys know what they're doing. People say to me, that's the counter argument to all this. It's a coincidence. I mean, that's the counter argument to all this. It's a coincidence. These guys who are creating these sublime masterpieces, these works of perfection with this occult symbolism in it, that is, these movies are overloaded with it when you have an eye to see it. I mean, you'll find it all over the damn place. Not every movie, of course, but yeah, I mean, it goes more beyond it's not a coincidence. It's being intentionally done. Why is it being done? It's a transformative. It's a way to transform the movie into artwork. It's turning the thing you're watching on screen in this church-like environment, in this movie theater, into this pseudo-religious experience. You're watching sacred symbols, sacred mythology being presented on you, being presented in front of you, whether it's Marty McFly, who is Horus, or Luke Skywalker, or who is Apollo. It's all the exact same thing. So, you have Manly Palmer Hall's Philosophical Research Society, which is a stone's throw from Hollywood. You have, all these guys in Hollywood, all talk about in their literature, how Joseph Campbell is influencing them. So these guys are all fully aware of it. It's not a coincidence, people. These guys know what they're doing. In some instances, you will have a filmmaker who is not aware of this material that is incorporating it. I think of some of the works of Ed Wood, who was this B-movie producer who was clearly not informed with this material, yet is incorporating it. This would be sort of the idea of the collective unconscious affecting even him. Mm-hmm. I document in Cinema Symbolism synchronicity going on in real life. Where it goes beyond the movie, where you will have people's lives, entertainers' lives, paralleling astrology from start to finish. I can't reconcile it, but you will have it. I talk about this in the book. It's a fascinating subject matter. And people, if you're interested in this material, please check out the book. Like I said, it's an offshoot of the Royal Arch of Enoch, which was 20 years of research and writing. So I took that 20 years and I applied it to movies. And, I think, the feedback I'm getting from the book, the book's only been out for about a month now, but the feedback I'm getting has been overwhelmingly positive. So please check out Cinema Symbolism. And again, it's in the Kindle, the Nooks, the paperbacks, Robert W. Sullivan IV. Please check it out. We're scratching the surface. On the show tonight, we're doing some really good material, but for more in depth, please check out the book.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I so agree with that. Yeah, that's something that I don't think anybody's put a book out like that. I don't think anybody's actually dove into it like you have.
Yeah, I think my book. The one thing when I do these books like Royal Arch and this one is I try to present material that you're not. What I really try to pride myself on is providing material or writing about material that you're not going to find anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And I think I've done that with Royal Arch of Enoch, and I think I've done that with Cinema Symbolism. Of course, I reference stuff in Royal Arch of Enoch. I have to give some background history. It's the same thing with the movie book. I have to reference, Joseph Campbell, Aleister Crowley, things like that. People, I have to talk about things that people will be aware of. But I think overall, you're going to find brand new information in both the books that you're not going to find anywhere else. And I really try to pride myself on that. I have to create a foundation, of course, and talk about some things that people know, and lay the groundwork, of course. But then I think the conclusions and the research I present is stuff you're not going to find anywhere else. So yes, please check out the Royal Arch of Enoch, and please check out Cinema Symbolism, which is literally brand new as we speak.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, you're a benchmark of knowledge. And you use that benchmark to decode a lot of things that most people I don't think would even notice. So I find it very fascinating, and I applaud you for doing that. That's pretty darn cool. So. Well,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think you're right. I think it's their intent is to transform consciousness while people are observing the films. It will anyway. It's going to transform and transcend, and somehow it's going to hit people through osmosis. So.
Well, like it hits people, but it may hit them in an unconscious way, and that's done intentionally as well. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. Like in the Exorcist movie, and this is a good one. I was just on another show talking about this. Is what William Friedkin does is we have the movie. It opens in Iraq with the dig, but we don't know. It's a desert, so we have no point of reference at that point in time. And then we switch to Georgetown, and we know, this movie's 40 years old, so we know the little girl's going to become possessed, and the demon or the evil's going to enter Georgetown and this little girl's house and Georgetown in general. We have the facing of the statue in the chapel there, in the Dahlgren Chapel at Georgetown University. So what does Friedkin do? Well, he shows you something right away that will go by you. You'll see it, but you won't understand why you've seen it, and it will tweak your unconscious, and it's done intentionally. It's right off the bat. And he doesn't flash it on the screen. He doesn't put a thing up saying, the date or anything like that. But what he does is, it's very early on in the movie when the Ellen Burstyn character, Chris McNeil, is filming the scene at Georgetown University, and then she says to the limousine driver, she says, "Oh, I'm going to walk home tonight." And she's walking through the Georgetown neighborhood, and she gets accosted and run over by the trick-or-treaters. Okay, he has just told you right then by that scene, okay, that is October 31st, okay, and we know Halloween is associated with the dark side. This is the halfway point between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. This is when the sun is entering decay and death. The darkness is exalted. By showing you those trick-or-treaters, he has just identified the date in your unconscious mind of Halloween, which is associated with darkness, and we now know that we are autumn entering winter when the sun is entering death, decay in the northern hemisphere, and darkness and evil is being exalted. And he has just shown you this by just showing you trick-or-treaters. Mm-hmm. And it's a work of genius. It's genius what he has done, and you won't even pick up on it. Your subconscious mind will, but your unconscious mind will see it but may not make that connection. So but by just showing you that, he has just shown you that darkness is about to enter this movie. We are dealing with the death of the sun, the death of the winter months, autumn. Darkness is ruling. The demon is coming. The darkness is coming into the film. And he has identified that. He hasn't flashed it on the screen. He hasn't put a date up saying October 3rd, 31st, 1973. But by showing you those trick-or-treaters running by, he has subconsciously and subliminally planted in your mind darkness, death, evil, decay. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm. It truly is. And the way you break it down is even more fascinating, if you ask me.
Well, thank you. I talk about it in the book, and like I said, if you're listening to this show right now, and you're interested in what I'm saying, please check out please check out Cinema Symbolism, and also check out Royal Arch of Enoch. That's more about occult Freemasonry. But I do talk about some of the Masonic movies in Royal Arch of Enoch. But yeah, definitely. I mean, The Exorcist is the first chapter of the book. And what I will also say is with Cinema Symbolism, I mean, I have a very extensive introduction in the book where I lay out these guidelines, I explain these principles. So, if you're new to the subject matter, and you've never heard of Carl Gustav Jung before, or you've never heard of synchronicity before, or you've never heard of astrotheology before, or Sabianism, or solar iconography, or mythology, or religious symbolism, or things like this, I have a very extensive introduction where I lay all this out for you, and you'll be able, tarot cards, same sort of thing, where you'll be able to pick up on this and run with it, and understand the book. I just don't throw you to the wolves, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is I break all this down and you'll be able to understand this as the book unfolds. The Exorcist is the first chapter of the book, and again, I break all this down in the Cinema Symbolism book with all this mythology and all this arcana, and the book is 13 chapters long, and Exorcist is one of the movies. The Omen trilogy is another one.
Oh, the Omen's in there too, yeah.
Oh yeah, you have the.
I'm going to ask you about that.
well, it's the same thing. I mean, right. You have the same themes going on in this. And again, in the Omen movie, what all three of them, you have a really. We don't have time to get into all this, but I will touch on it. You have a lot of Egyptian symbology going on, and this again suggests what we were talking about earlier with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Is you have this whole theme of the Antichrist and the return of Christ, and the Antichrist and this whole Christian revelation, Christian end of days, as it were. But you have a lot of Egyptian themes going on in the Omen, and in Omen 2 and Omen 3, especially in Omen 3 and Omen 2. But and again, you can't help but wonder. And I mentioned this point blank in the book. It's a Christian movie. We're dealing with these Christian themes. Granted, they're darker Christian themes, but is this again trying to insinuate this Egyptian origin of Christianity? Where it's Horus versus Set, Jesus versus the Antichrist, light versus darkness. You have these themes going on in the Omen trilogy, but then getting back to the Exorcist and the Omen, I mean, you'll see the same thing going on, where we talk about with the Exorcist with the thing with the Halloween, and the concept of autumn and winter coming and death, decay, darkness being exalted. And you'll find this in The Shining also, where the demons come out to play during the blizzard and the winter months. When the sun is dead, darkness rules. This is when the demons come out and torment Jack Torrance. In The Omen, you'll find the same thing, and you'll really see this in parts 2 and 3. Pay attention to the weather in part 2. It is, and believe you me, the director goes out of his way to show you this. In The Omen Part 2, this is the one where the Antichrist, Damien Thorne, is coming of age, is entering adolescence, is becoming powerful, is beginning to become conscious of who he is. This movie, The Omen 2, is in a perpetual state of winter and autumn. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I mean, the movie takes flip-flops endlessly between winter and autumn. That's all it is winter and autumn. It will never be spring and summer when the sun is, becoming powerful, and the sun, Christ, the light of the world, enlightenment, truth. When the movie, when the Antichrist and darkness is coming to power, it's autumn, winter, death of Son, death of Jesus, death of the resurrected Savior. In Omen 2, it's all autumn, winter. It's never spring, summer. Now, in Omen 3, when does Jesus come back? Well, it's the vernal equinox. It's March 23rd. It's 3 days after the vernal equinox. This is when the Antichrist or darkness is defeated. So therefore, in Omen 3, Jesus returns at the autumn equinox. If you really think I'm stretching this, Omen 3 was actually released on the vernal equinox. Excuse me if I said autumn equinox. I meant vernal equinox of 1981. So the movie's release date actually has astrological, occult symbolism. And again, this ties into what we were talking about earlier in this hour. It goes beyond these movies. It goes beyond a lot of times of what you're seeing on the screen.
Right.
Pay attention to the artwork. Pay attention to the release date. A lot of times this can be Kabbalistic as well. It's a fascinating subject matter.
It really is, and I can honestly say, I mean, I do the same thing. I'm always, I do certain things around astrological influence, so it doesn't surprise me at all, actually. It's quite interesting. Just to touch on the Antichrist a little bit, and I don't know what your take is on that whole energetic, but to me, the Antichrist is the polar opposite, obviously, of the Christ consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. So have you heard this, where some people assume that the Christ consciousness, in order for the Christ to appear, the polar opposite has to make its presence known. Now, whether it's a person or just an energetic signature, but literally the polarization, the Antichrist has to appear in frequency before it can draw the polar opposite. Have you heard that?
That's sort of not my bailiwick, but
okay.
I know I am familiar with it a little bit. But my take on the Bible, by and large, and this is sort of suggesting what you were asked. What's in your question is my take on the Bible, both Old and New Testament, and of course, Book of Revelation is part of the New Testament. And this is something I talk about in Symbolism, but I really get into it more in Royal Arch of Enoch. It's the concept of the Bible being an astrological allegory, being sort of this mythological, astrological allegory. I offer a bit of an apology about it because I don't want to tick off too many people. And I kind of get into, look, could there have been real people, and the people who were constructing the book just were using, the mythological, astro-theological, allegories coming out of the ancient mystery schools. That's very possible. But really, when you look at the Bible, both the Old and New Testament, I mean, you really are dealing with a lot of astrological mythology. So, my take on it is, the whole concept with Antichrist to me is really sort of like it's sort of like what you were saying. It's just like light versus darkness, and it's really the oldest battle of them all. It's light versus darkness. I mean, this predates Christianity, Judeo-Christianity. I mean, this is Manichaean cosmology and to the Gnostics. This is, Zoroastrianism that predates Christianity. Ahriman and Aramazda, Horus and Set, light versus darkness. And again, this is, Jesus versus the devil or Jesus versus the Antichrist. So, that's sort of my, my take on it. I kind of, try to put it in as friendly terms as possible. But I talk about it in Royal Arch of Enoch, and I definitely talk about it in Symbolism, because a lot of these movies, a lot of these movies like The Exorcist and The Omen, and the Omen trilogy really do involve a lot of these astrological solar themes that are in the movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. Now, I know, did you touch on X-Files or not?
I'm sorry, which movie?
X-Files, just the series itself.
Well, the X-Files, I'm very familiar with them, and it's funny you bring that up to me because, there is some, I guess one of the X-Files has one of my favorite references to Aleister Crowley in it, probably of all time. But you will have in the X-Files, you will have each episode sort of goes on its own. I mean, it's a whole thing, the whole show was based on, the government conspiracy and what Chris Carter was doing there. He answers one question, but by answering it, he opens the door for 50 more of them. Mm-hmm. But with the X-Files, you will have there was an episode called Jose Chung's From Outer Space, which was named after an Ed Wood movie of all things known as Plan 9 from Outer Space, which revolved around Gnostic themes of false world versus real world, which was interesting. But one of my favorite, and I'll talk about the X-Files in a minute because this ties into the whole concept of what we were talking about earlier is, whether this stuff is intentionally placed or not. In the X-Files, there was an episode, and I forget the name of it. I believe it's called The Hand That Wounds, but the title was in German. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. And it was a second year or third year episode. And I want to say it was second year. I don't think it was first year. I think it was second year. But this revolved around the episode revolved around this witchcraft, satanic Goetia magic going on at a high school up in New England, where these students were trying to conjure demonic entities or principalities. And the teachers were apparently involved with this as well. A substitute teacher shows up who is apparently the devil in disguise. But to make a long story short, it was taking place at this high school. Well, the name of the high school, you see it a couple times in the background. The name of the high school was Crowley High. A clear reference to Aleister Crowley. Yeah, and I thought that was great. That's one of my all-time favorite Crowley references, and that's in a TV show, which was great. But getting into the X-Files real quick, and you'll remember this if you watched the show. There were these three conspiracy guys on the show called the Lone Gunmen. Mm-hmm. Right, and these guys were the guys that if Mulder ever had a question or got stumped, he'd go to these guys, and these guys were the guys who were into the big government conspiracies, kind of like the Philip K. Dick, we talked about this before, into the big government conspiracies, things like that. One of the actors who played one of the Lone Gunmen, I can't remember which one. I remember he was on a radio show or a podcast talking about this. He said one day I was on the set of the X-Files. He said I had to have a talk with the screenwriter or the director or the producer or one or all three of them. I had questions about the characters, motivation, the show. He said I remember going into the movie studio, the offices at 20th Century Fox, and I went into this person's office. And it was like a producer, screenwriter, one of movie, TV producer, whatever. He said I'm sitting at the desk and I'm looking around the office. He said there was a bookshelf there. He said I remember specifically looking at the bookshelf, and he said I remember thinking to myself, well, the bookshelf is probably going to have books on it about screenwriting, movie production, filming, things like that. He said I was dead wrong. He said all the books were books by Aleister Crowley, and black magic and Manly Palmer Hall and Freemasonry and the occult. He said that's all these guys are into. So he was just making the point that, and again, this is what we were talking about earlier, these guys are fully aware of this material. And he said it. He said, this bookshelf, that's all it was books by Crowley and Blavatsky and Hall and books on Freemasonry and the occult and mysticism and the mysteries. And these guys were obviously using this stuff to incorporate it into their TV shows, into the X-Files at any rate. So, yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating TV show. I always loved the X-Files when it was on.
Yeah, me too.
But you'll definitely find the one Crowley reference there. And I know the Jose Chung episode is something I talk about the Crowley reference in Cinema Symbolism. The Jose Chung episode, which was one of my all-time favorites, dealt with the entire concept of phony realities. And this is something you'll find in the Matrix films. The false reality versus the real reality. The Jose Chung episode dealt with this exact same thing, was what was real, what wasn't, what was the true reality, what wasn't, which is a very Gnostic concept. And it's fascinating, and it's one of my favorite all-time X-Files episodes.
Wow, yeah, very much so. So what about Star Trek?
Well, Star Trek, what's interesting with Star Trek, and again, this is something I'm talking about in cinema symbolism too, as far as Star Trek goes, you have there's some mysticism going on with this. By and large, it's just a TV show, with the characters going out and exploring, other worlds. I've watched a lot of the episodes. I really can't find too much hidden symbolism or anything like that. You will find arcane themes in it, but this would be, not surprising, especially with a TV show dealing with extraterrestrials, space exploration. You will have some interesting arcana, though, and this is something I talk about in cinema symbolism too, where you will clearly have, we talked about earlier, the Hermes Trismegistus character in film. This is Albus Dumbledore, Gandalf the Grey, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, Morpheus. In Star Trek, one of your probably most famous Hermes Trismegistus of all time, Mr. Spock, the Keeper of the Wisdom, the guy who knows everything. And of course, you have some mysticism surrounding Spock with his little hand gesture. I don't know if people are aware of this or not. The live long and prosper Vulcan hand gesture, that is the letter V. You aware of this or not?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
No, you want me to continue on?
Yeah, I'd like you to continue on.
Yeah, no, you know what I'm talking about, the little V.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the Hebrew letter Shin, and that means God or divine will. So, when Leonard Nimoy said that when he was in a synagogue, he used to see this being flashed, or he was familiar with he was trying to form the Hebrew letter Shin with that hand gesture, and it's a symbolic way of imbuing divine presence, and of course live long and prosper. So when you see Mr. Spock, when you watch Star Trek and you watch him flash that Vulcan hand gesture, know that you are seeing the Hebrew letter Shin, and of course this also has Kabbalistic meaning. It's triple divided, and of course to the Kabbalists this would be the first three Sephirot. And it also has Kabbalistic meaning. I'd have to pull the book out to get into its specific, but every time you see Mr. Spock flash the hand gesture, it's a symbol of Hebrew Kabbalah, and it's the Hebrew letter Shin, and it has to do with divine presence. So very interesting piece of arcana going on with Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Wow, and of course we always practice that symbol. I don't know about you, but...
Oh, yeah, people hold it up all the time, live long and prosper.
Great.
Yeah, the Vulcan symbol. Yeah, it's a Hebrew letter, and it deals with Hebrew Kabbalah. It's something I'm talking about in cinema symbolism too.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about 2001: Space Odyssey. I know that one's just loaded, right?
Well, yeah, this is something I talk about. I talk about it briefly when I talk about it in cinema symbolism. You have some interesting things going on in this. It's written by Arthur C. Clarke. It's directed by Stanley Kubrick, and of course Kubrick did The Shining. It's the polar. If you want to see the polar opposite of movies, you can watch it in 2001 in The Shining, where in 2001 Kubrick shows you the apotheosis of mankind. In The Shining, he shows you mankind's descent into savagery and madness. But you have some arcana going on into 2001. Concepts of Kabbalistic apotheosis, the apotheosis of mankind becoming divine-like at the very end of the movie. You have the concept of the monoliths, encoding this arcane extraterrestrial wisdom. One can't help but draw parallels with the Trilithon stones of Stonehenge. I talk about this at the book in cinema symbolism, where I keep wanting to call them the monomyths,
Monolith,
Joseph Campbell. Yeah, no, the monoliths.
Right.
The monoliths in 2001 clearly resemble the trilithon stones of Stonehenge. Which many believe are encoded with our true origins, whether they be extraterrestrial or not. So you can't help but draw comparisons between things like Stonehenge and the monoliths. And then, you have, what is it, the one on the moon is outside Tycho crater. That's a reference to Tycho Brahe, the famous astronomer. With Clarke's 2001, you definitely have this concept with the apotheosis of mankind, which, ties in again to Kabbalistic change, the ascent of mankind to divine-like state, and you can't help but see the nexus with the monoliths to things like the trilithon stones at Stonehenge, the devices in the Clarke novel and the Kubrick movie are, possessed as extraterrestrial secret wisdom about mankind, and you can't help but draw the comparison with things like Stonehenge, and places like, Avebury in England, and all these other giant monolithic structures, which seem to be encoding the secret yet lost, the secret history about mankind that, whether it's extraterrestrial or not, we don't know, but no one can seem to figure it out. Seem to have a parallel there with the monoliths of 2001.
Right. Yeah. So insofar as the NASA symbolism goes in general, just NASA in general, what's your impression of that?
Oh yeah. This is something I get into in Royal Arch of Enoch, with some of the NASA symbolism. Sure. I'm actually working on another book on Freemasonry called Freemasonry and the Path to Babylon, which I'm going to get into a little more of the NASA symbolism. Nice. But one of the guys behind this was Fred Kleinknecht, who was a 33rd degree Mason. I mean, you go to the moon. And the moon is, of course, the sacred feminine. The moon has always been the symbol of the sacred feminine, Diana, Artemis. So, when you send men to the moon, you have to invoke the sun. So, of course, you name your rockets Apollo, the sun god. It's the unification of the sun and moon, the alchemical wedding, the anime and the animus, the formulation of the alchemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, the unification of the sun and moon. So if you're going to send men to the moon, of course, you have to invoke the sun. So, of course, you invoke the sun god Apollo. This is why all the moon missions are named Apollo, after the sun god. So you're going to have the unification of the sun and moon. A lot of the NASA emblems and logos are typically Freemasonic. The granddaddy of them all is Apollo 13, and I delve into this big time in the Royal Arch of Enoch book, which, the 13th, moon mission, of course, invokes the 13th degree of the Scottish Rite, which is the Royal Arch of Enoch. The symbol for, and this is what we talked about earlier in the show, is the symbol that, the name of God is recovered is the sun. So, of course, you have Apollo, which is the sun god. The symbol for Apollo 13 is the sun being carted across the sky in the Kabbalistic solar chariot of Apollo. And this, again, deals with concepts of solar apotheosis, the sun as God. And this is, again, echoing the 13th degree by possessing the tetragrammaton, which is made possible via the sun rays, where you possess it and you become an Enochian godlike figure. This is, again, coming out of the Book of Enoch. And then the motto, for Apollo 13 is, it's in Latin, I forget what it is, but it means from the moon knowledge. And again, this is deriving or drawing from this 13th degree in the Scottish Rite, the Royal Arch of Enoch degree, where you possess the tetragrammaton. It's the restoration of the antediluvian wisdom, the antediluvian knowledge. You're restoring what was lost. So, of course, it's from the moon wisdom, invoking this 13th degree, this 13th degree of the Scottish Rite. So you, of course, have the esoteric wisdom, from the moon wisdom being invoked, which is clearly referencing this 13th degree of the Scottish Rite, the Royal Arch of Enoch, which was the 13th degree in the original Rite of Perfection. It's something I talk about. The 13th Apollo mission and the symbolism with that is something I've really delved into in Royal Arch of Enoch, and I'm getting a little bit more into some of the NASA stuff in this new book on Freemasonry. I'm writing, co-writing. Well, I'm not co-writing it. I'm writing it in conjunction with these. I'm writing 3 books at once right now. I'm doing Cinema Symbolism 2. I'm working on my first work of fiction, and I just started a brand new book on Freemasonry called Freemasonry and the Path to Babylon, which I'm going to fill in some of the backstory, of Masonic history in the United States. I'm going to get again into some of the NASA material. I'm going to revisit the federal district in this. So yeah, I mean, you'll definitely see it, with the NASA material. And just right off the bat, it's the Apollo, the unification of the sun and moon.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you're doing that. That's a load of information. That's excellent. So when The Shining was created, obviously they had some kind of a parallel correlation with NASA. Can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, that's right. You have a lot of levels of symbology going on in The Shining. It's what I was just saying. If you want to see the apotheosis of mankind, it's 2001 in Kubrick. If you want to see his descent into madness, it's The Shining. You will see in The Shining some astrological, sort of what you'd call anti-sun, anti-gnosis, symbolism. It's the downfall of the sun. It's the exaltation of darkness at the winter months. You'll find astrological symbolism surrounding the Overlook Hotel. It's referred to as KBK 12 houses of the zodiac. The room number 237. If you add the number up, you get the number 12. Again, a zodiac reference. The Overlook is constantly presented as a maze. The maze is a solar emblem that comes out of the ancient mystery schools, where you had to navigate a maze to get enlightenment, or you usually reach the center, and if you reached it, you were rewarded with esoteric wisdom, like a mechanical fountain of Minerva or Apollo or Hermes or something like that. So you will have sort of this dark maze in the Overlook Hotel, symbolizing anti-gnosis or anti-enlightenment. But then you get into this whole thing, and this comes from a documentary called Room 237. So I got to give credit there. And the idea behind this is that Kubrick was hired by NASA and the federal government to film the guys jumping around on the moon. Whether they went to the moon or not in 1969 is debatable, but the actual moon footage was filmed at a secret at a secret location. And Kubrick is the guy who filmed it. And believe it or not, there is some bite to this story, or some teeth to it. Kubrick definitely had ties to NASA and the government. And the idea was that the government saw 2001, saw the Dr. Strangelove movie, was very impressed with Kubrick's use of lighting, of rockets, of aircraft, of spaceships, and retained him to film this footage of these guys jumping around in what looks like the moon, but it was actually a set. Now the idea is whether they went to the moon is another thing. Some people say, it was all faked. The idea was, they could have actually gone to the moon, but the footage was actually filmed to show people, and that Kubrick's the guy who filmed it. And the idea is, and this again comes from this movie called Room 237, is Kubrick shows you this in The Shining. And it's the scene where, and of course we all seen it a million times, where the little boy, Danny Torrance, is playing with the toys in the hallway. And if you look at the way the toys are arranged, they're arranged in a way that usually vehicles are arranged around a rocket before a rocket takes off. And then the little boy stands up, and he stands up with authority, and he's wearing the Apollo 11 sweater. And this is symbolizing the moon launch. And he stands up with authority. I mean, I've watched this scene a million times, and if you watch it, pay attention to the way the little kid stands up. I mean, he stands up with authority. I mean, it's not just him getting up, he's doing it with purpose. And this is symbolizing the moon launch. And then, of course, he walks to room 237, and he opens the door, and the evil woman's inside. Well, in the book, in King's novel, the room is room 213. And Kubrick changed it. He changed it to 237. And King never understood why it was changed. King actually asked Kubrick why he changed it, and Kubrick never answered him. He just wrote it off as artistic license. The reason, this is the theory as to why it was changed, or one of the reasons why, is it's a lunar reference. Is in the late 1980s, or excuse me, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, when The Shining came out, the moon's distance from the Earth was approximately 237,000 miles. So when you see that image and that scene from The Shining, you'll see the rocket launch. This is the little boy standing up wearing the Apollo 11 sweater. Then he walks over to the room 237. It's the moon. It's Apollo 11 going to the moon. Is what Kubrick is symbolically trying to show you. And by telling you this, by showing you this, he's symbolically trying to tell you, hey, I'm the guy who filmed the moon landing. The guy's jumping around. And it's interesting also. Just real quick is there's a James Bond movie that actually shows this. I believe it's Diamonds Are Forever, and it takes place in Las Vegas. And there's a scene where James Bond, who's Sean Connery, actually is going through this secret government base, which is most likely Area 51, because it's out in the, it's Las Vegas. And he stumbles into the guys filming the moon landing, the guys jumping around. It's actually in a James Bond movie. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
That of all places that they would fake a moon landing in a James Bond movie, and show you that the government's filming this, and then, Kubrick's later showing you this in The Shining. Is it a coincidence? Some people say there's nothing to it. It's completely debatable. I've seen that scene a million times in The Shining, and it definitely looks like that little kid is standing up with authority, symbolizing a rocket launch to me. And the fact that he changed the digits from 213 to 237, and again, you have an astrological reference. If you add them up, you get the number 12. But then this is the distance from the Earth to the Moon in the late 1970s, early 80s. It's Apollo 11 going to the Moon is what he's showing you. And just on another level, real quick, and I'll wrap up with this because I see we're getting low on time here. Yeah, just wrap up real quick. Or just on another level, the movie The Shawshank Redemption. With Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. This was also based on a Stephen King short story. The Morgan Freeman character, Reds, his jail cell is 237, which is also paying homage to this whole notion of 237 with the Kubrick Shining movie. So, yeah, it's just really interesting. I talk about The Shining big time in cinema symbolism. I get into it more from a Gnostic astrological theme where it's light versus darkness, and it's really anti-gnosis and anti-apotheosis is what's going on in The Shining. But you have this whole thing. I'm talking about the whole lunar landing thing in cinema symbolism too. I have a portion called Return to the Overlook Hotel in cinema symbolism too. So once that book's out, we can come on and do more about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You have to come back on, and I do want everybody to know once again where they can get in touch with you and where they can get a hold of your books and purchase them as well. So let's do that.
Well, first off, let me say thank you, Solaris, for having me on the Witching Hour tonight. I really appreciate it. I feel like a regular almost.
Hey, I want you to be.
Yeah, now regular. This is, I think, the third time I've been on one of these shows. Yeah, that's right. So thank you very much for having me on. I sincerely appreciate it. I thought it was a great show.
Honored.
And again, just I really appreciate it. If you were interested in what I had to say tonight and you liked what I was saying, and you want to check out my books, the easiest way is to go to my website, which is www.robertwsullivan.com. My name is the fourth, so it's www.robertwsullivan with two L's IV.com. It's all connected, all lowercase. From there's a banner. You can click on it that will take you to my publisher's site. If you want to buy the signed copies of Royal Arch of Enoch and Cinema Symbolism, those are only available exclusively via my publisher. You can also buy the Kindle and Nooks there. You can buy the Kindle and Nooks on BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com. They are available for instant download. You can buy the paperbacks of the Royal Arch and Cinema Symbolism at Amazon, but they will not be signed. So if you want the signed copies, go to my website. Again, www.robertwsullivan.com. You get the signed copies there. Just click on the banner. You'll see it immediately when you go to the site. But again, the Kindles, they're all $9.99. The Royal Arch of Enoch is 700 pages. Cinema Symbolism is 465 pages. All the Kindles, the ebooks are $9.99. It's in the Apple Bookstore as well. And again, if you go to my website, there is links to my YouTube channel where you can go watch other videos I've produced, listen to other podcasts and radio shows I've been on. There's a link to my Twitter feed. You can follow me on Twitter. The Royal Arch of Enoch, Cinema Symbolism 2 has Facebook like pages which are routinely updated. You can become a fan there. there's all my social media there. Follow me on Twitter. Check out the website. There's some YouTube videos there that I produced. You can watch them about movie symbolism, about some of the themes in the Royal Arch of Enoch, about the Jesuits and Freemasonry, about the architecture of Washington, D.C. Again, links to my YouTube channel, Twitter. All this social media is routinely updated. Facebook like pages for all this. And again, that's www.robertwsullivan.iv.com. And of course, links there. You'll see it on the right side. There's a banner there when you get there, but there's a link there that says buy Rob's books, and you'll find all the links to the signed copies, the Kindles, the Nooks, and you'll find the Amazon shops in UK, Canada, all that. And again, for the last time, Robert W. Sullivan with 2 L's, IV.com. Check it out if you like what I said. And, links to all the social media and to purchase the books. And again, thank you, Solaris, for having me on. I thought it was a great show.
Oh, Rob, it was an excellent show. And I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Like I said, I have so much respect for you. And you are a database of knowledge, and you are the man to talk to about all this, the Masonic information and everything else that goes along with it. So really happy to have you on tonight. And I do want to thank everybody for tuning in, and I hope you appreciated the information. And please check out Robert's books. They're fantastic. And also stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Becky coming up next to sail you on into the night from down under. And we have just about a few minutes here. But so what do you think? I mean, just briefly, I know we're going to run out of time, but with the moon, does it sound like they used a different technology to get to the moon, and maybe they just used a little bit of scenery with the filming?
Well, that's completely debatable. That's the idea. Is they could have gone. There's a couple ways of looking at it. One is that they faked the whole thing and never went, and the footage is just them jumping around. There's 3 ways of looking at it. Another thing is that they're right. They went, and that's the footage they filmed, and there was no faking, and they filmed it on the moon, and the government story is correct. The other way is the one that they went to the moon, but they couldn't take the cameras and they couldn't film there, so they faked. The footage is fake, but they actually went to the moon. Who knows? I mean, some people believe that the whole thing is fake. Some people believe it's all real. Some people are torn. I don't know. My gut feeling is I do believe they went, but there is some issues with this, with some of the footage. So at any rate, it's debatable. But the idea is that Kubrick, if it was fake, Kubrick's the guy who filmed it, and he tips you off to this in The Shining.
That's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Rob. Appreciate you having you on, everybody. Have a great week, and thank you again.
Listening to Revolution Radio.